All right. Welcome to the Pantheon Parenthetical. No, I'm sorry, not that. Space Limited Accomplishments Interval. I am your host, Lance Ash, and this is...
Your wife.
Named Bonnie. And going back to work after a 3-day weekend on Valentine's Day. And the whole radio, what's the word I'm looking for? This whole recording in the car project was partially inspired by videos by George Rockwell Schmidt on YouTube. And after a long absence, I just accidentally discovered that he had posted a new video with his friend Damien. And I guess as a special treat, after being away for a whole year, he did a 3-hour thing. I'm not only 1/3 of the way through it. But anyway, so I'm goosed about that. And so as a tribute to that, we're going to do a little extra long show today. Don't know what that means. Maybe 2 extra minutes or something. But anyway, this was a really good weekend because I finished a painting and thereby ended a phase of my painting career and started a new painting, which is the first in this new phase where I'm going to be a little looser with what I do, and it's going to have a standard compositional format. That way I won't have to think of something every time. It'll just be already set in place what I do. How was your weekend, Bonnie?
Meh.
Meh?
Meh.
Didn't you do a lot of reading?
Some. Finished a book.
What have you been reading lately?
Crap. Pulp.
You've been reading these books by Preston and Child.
Okay.
Are they science fiction?
No.
Murder mystery? What are they?
Pulp.
Pulp. Okay.
Way to pastime.
Okay, very good. Well, I guess, I had some other shit I was going to talk about. But I tell you what, we'll do our usual, our basic fallback theme, which is horrible things that happened in the past. How about that?
Sure.
Okay. My last day I worked, came across this newsletter by the Georgia Retired Teachers Association. And I thought, aha, these will be the perfect people to contact to find out anything about this teacher I had in 3rd grade. And I sent them an email and they said, nope, no information, she's not a member. So they didn't go the extra mile and do the research for me. I've tried to find this woman for years, and the reason I want to find her is because I'm sure she remembers me, because I was a problem child. And I just want to ask her for some insight onto that year and what my behavior was like and what the whole thing, the whole reason for the heavy hand laid upon me was about. So, but no luck. I'm also looking for this child psychologist, I guess psychologist, not psychiatrist, that I had to go see that year. And, but I haven't been able to discover her either. Oh, I thought they were trash bags, but they're lion statues at that woman's back door.
Yeah, they're hideous.
What did you made or baked something this weekend, right?
Did I?
Oh, banana bread, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And my rolls and carrot soup, and you have your pasta with roasted vegetables for tonight.
Yeah.
I made something else. I can't remember what it was.
You made something. Oh, well, you made those pierogi type things.
Oh, yeah, we did have the cheese ravioli and a salad, and oh God, we stopped and we bought Those god-awful prepared pastas, remember?
Well, they were okay for what they are.
You're terrible.
Well, I'll tell you, I ate the pierogies left over in the middle of the night, and they were cold, and I realized you're basically eating wet dough. Oh, that brings up a sad story. I might have mentioned this before. Bonnie knows the story. When my grandmother was dying, essentially.
Say why she was dying.
Okay. She was dying from emphysema, even though she didn't smoke, and
Who did smoke?
my grandfather smoked, and he smoked a pipe for years and years and years, and then very late in life switched over to some kind of cigarettes that didn't make a smell. That was the marketing strategy, but I don't know. Anyway,
Just as deadly.
Bonnie is this is one of her bugaboos, is that this happened. Secondhand smoke. But anyway, so she's dying, and she's too sick and ill to cook anymore. So they lived right across the street from us, and my mother bought them Mexican food one night for their supper, and from a local place, and it was burritos wrapped up in paper.
Had they ever had Mexican food?
No,
before?
okay, I'm getting to that. Okay, so she drops off the food. Here's your supper. And a little while later gets a phone call from my grandfather. He's like, those things you brought us, how do you cook them? Well, you don't cook them, they're ready to eat. And he goes, but that's raw dough. And no, it's not raw. Anyway, they were very displeased with the meal. I can only imagine that they opened up the burritos and ate what was inside and then threw away the tortillas. But the story is sad for two reasons. Number one, my grandparents had never had Mexican food, certainly never had burritos, and didn't know what the deal was with them. I thought that was very sad because it shows how limited their experience was with the world and how insulated by their direct lives, the things they're only directly in contact with. And second, because my mother was so, what's the word, unimaginative as to think, well, this will be great to bring to these really old people to eat, not thinking, well, maybe this won't be exactly what they want. So it's just really sad.
Which brings us to lasagna.
What about it?
Your grandmother.
Oh yeah, my grandmother pronounced lasagna, lasasha.
The other grandmother.
Yeah, this is the other grandmother. And she'd never had it before, and my mother made it one night. And my grandmother's standard response to, turning the air down a little bit, it's hot in here, to anything she ate, was, that's the best stuff I've ever put in my mouth. And she said that when she had the lasagna. But I'll tell you another horrible story about my other grandfather, her husband. I was still living at home when this happened, and probably when I was about 16, 17, somewhere in there. My mother and father and I, maybe my sister too, were walking down on the far end of the property. And we're walking back up the hill. See, my father's parents lived across the street, and my mother's parents lived next door to us. And we're walking up the hill towards where my mother's parents lived, and my mother notices her father sitting in the backyard on one of his homemade chairs. And she's like, oh no, today's his birthday. That's why he was checking the mailbox so many times. He was expecting a card or something. She turns to me and pulls out a $20 bill. She goes, here, go give this to him and tell him happy birthday. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's tacky and embarrassing and shameful. And no, I'm not doing that. You forgot your father's birthday. No, forget it. So she goes up to him and shoves it in his hand. And goes, "Happy birthday," and kind of walks off. And I just thought it was tacky and just shameful. Anyway.
She would have had a fit if anybody had forgotten her birthday.
Yeah. Well.
She would have made them feel guilty for years.
Well, later on that day, my cousins from North Carolina showed up. And we were there in the house, in my grandparents' house, when they showed up. And they walked in the door, and they had a paper sack with a carton of cigarettes in it. And my older cousin hands it to my grandfather. He goes, "Happy birthday, Granddaddy." And she gives him a hug and a kiss on the head. And I thought, the tackiness is complete.
White trash.
Oh my God, it was horrible.
Why did I marry into your ilk?
I don't know.
God.
But see, they all felt like they were paying him back for him being a drunk when my mother and her brothers were younger.
But he wasn't always a drunk, was he?
No. In the early 60s, after my mother and her two brothers were grown and moved out, my grandmother divorced him because she felt like, okay, that's the basics of family life are over with. I can get rid of him now. So they got a divorce, and he quit drinking. They were divorced for 7 years, and he stayed sober the whole time. So she felt, okay, he's reformed and changed. I can get back together with him now. And they remarried, and he started drinking again.
Nothing quite like your mother's family to drive people to drink.
Oh my God.
But he set a fine example for your uncles.
Yeah, well.
Meat.
Oh, okay, I'll tell you. That's another. Why don't you have any funny stories like this?
Because my family wasn't trash.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We're going to pull these stories out of you. I'm sure there's some hidden around in your brain somewhere. All right. The story Bonnie's referring to is my uncle. That motherfucker's pulling right out in front of us. All right. Anyway. So, my uncle lived in a little tiny trailer. At one time, lived in a little tiny trailer in Social Circle, or no. This was out in the middle of a field.
Okay, and
anyway, so I was about 7 when this happened. He had been sleeping with some other man's wife, and the other man showed up and beat the living hell out of him. And they found him in a pool of blood in the living room of the house, and he was in the hospital, of the trailer. So, a couple days later, he's in the hospital still. My grandmother, my mother, and my sister was probably there too, but she would have been really little, went over there to the trailer to inspect the damage or get valuables or something to put things in order or something. And a sheriff's deputy, who I guess had been involved with the report, the incident report, was there to accompany us. So we're going through, we walk in, open the door, walk in, and of course it's the living room right there, first thing you walk into. And the place was a shambles. And he was like a tour guide showing us around the place. And you could see the pool of blood on the carpet. It was a big dark stain. And the guy had, for whatever reason, ripped the bottom ventilator panel off the refrigerator and hit my uncle in the head with it. And the deputy picked it up off the floor, and he's holding it out at arm's length, and he's got it right in my face. And there was a piece of scalp sticking in the very end of the thing with some hair sticking out of it. And he goes, You can see there's a little bit of meat still on it. And I was nauseated looking at this thing right in front of my eyes, and I could not say the word meat for maybe 5-6 years after that. I couldn't say it. It was just, associative nausea. So, have you thought of anything yet?
The only thing I can think about is going over to my Uncle Denny's house, and my Uncle Denny was one of those men that was kind of like your mother, big on keeping up appearances, had a fleet of Volvos and a big, huge house before McMansions became big, lived on the lake, and he was a UPS driver. Anyway, so we were over at his house for one Thanksgiving, and of course he has to go and show off his toys, and he has a new gun. He's like, let's go out and shoot the gun. And I'm like, God, okay. The guy was, what's that phrase? Bipolar. So you did what Denny wanted because you didn't want to, mess with Denny, especially when he had a gun. So we all went out. We stood in the driveway, and the asshole proceeded to put his hand with a gun on my shoulder and use me for balance and shot off next to my ears. So if you're wondering why I'm hard of hearing, there you go.
Oh, it's a wonderful story. You got to submit that to Reader's Digest.
Oh, Thanksgiving with Cousin Sherry. Let's see. My mother has a string of crazy people in her family.
Really?
Yeah, my mother's crazy too. Down here we say she's been to Milledgeville. Anyway, Sherry had been to Milledgeville a couple times. And apparently after I was grown, my mother went down for Thanksgiving at her mother's, and Sherry was there, and Sherry went on one of her little tears and drew a knife on my mother. Yeah. So you got white trash, I got crazy in my family.
Now wait a minute, it was in the kitchen, they were arguing over some food or something?
I have no idea. It was just Sherry going off. My mother said that when she was young, her granny was living with Marie, her mother's sister at the time, and she was in a room, and Sherry got upset and proceeded to say, "Get off the bed, old woman," and started kicking her off the bed. This is her grandmother. She's kicking off the bed. So my mother went running out of the room saying, "Sherry's doing this, they're doing this." And her mother pulled her aside and said, "Just let's go." Apparently Sherry had been crazy from the get-go.
Oh my God.
She's the one that died, and there were pending charges against her because she and her husband were hoarders, and one of the things they hoarded were animals. And they had a vehicle in their yard where they had some animals locked up in the vehicle as the way they were keeping them. And somebody reported them, and they had pending charges when she died for cruelty to animals. So these were terrible people. Terrible people.
Okay, my mother's, well, both sets of grandparents were keen on having, like, gardens and gardening, raising vegetables and stuff.
But that's what they all did in that generation. I mean, Maymay had, her neighbor would give her land.
Watch out for these people.
To farm on next door. He would go and till the thing and call her up and say, "Mary Miller, their garden's ready if you want to come in and put in a couple of rows." And then my dad's family, of course, they had a huge garden. My granny had a greenhouse, and that's just what you did when you were semi-rural folks. You had a very large garden. Even as a child, when my mother was able to, we had a very large garden. I told you about this the other day. We were next to that dairy farm, and they'd let the cows out in the field, and so after they moved them, the manure would dry, and my mother would send us out to collect dry manure for the garden. And we would crumble it up into a bucket, and she would add water and then put that on the garden.
Well, okay. My father's parents, they had a pretty big chicken coop. Not like a industrial chicken house, but this was like a chicken coop where they had grown chickens they would collect them for their eggs and occasionally kill one for frying up. And they had a garden where they would raise okra and beans and stuff. But that was it. Now, my mother's parents, they were insistent that it was more like a farm. Had a huge piece of plowed ground where they would raise corn and sweet potatoes and beans and stuff. But in addition to that, they built a pig pen and they raised 2 pigs from babies, up till slaughtering size. Now, they would feed them table scraps and so forth, and occasionally they would have a vet come look at them or something. I can't remember what the impetus was for this was, but somebody told them these pigs need fresh air or something. Okay? Now, my grandparents' car was I don't know what year it was. It was a 70s Gran Torino. Just horrible forest green. Everything on the interior was vinyl. And they put the pigs in the back seat of the car and drove them around. I guess with the windows down so they could get fresh air. Now, the pigs shit all in the back of the car, right?
Because they're pigs.
Right. And when they get back to the house, they put the pigs back in the pig pen. Now they got a car full of shit. So, my grandfather took a garden hose. First of all, he punched holes in the floorboard with a screwdriver. And then he sprayed out the interior of the car with a garden hose and let the water drain out the holes in the back. Now, every day, when I was around 4th grade, 4th, 5th, somewhere in there, we would get off the bus at the post office and my grandmother would pick us up in the Gran Torino and drive us home.
Oh my God.
Now, we're driving in the car and I can look down through the holes and see the road passing by. And now,
The bed. Tell them the bed
Oh,
story.
the bed story. Okay.
These same grandparents. They had this old bed, maybe somewhere close to between a full size or, yeah, I guess so. But anyway, they went to the doctor and said, we're having this trouble, that trouble, poor circulation, whatever. He goes, well, here's what you need to do. You need to elevate the head of the bed so that while you elevate the head of the bed so that while you sleep, you'll get some blood going down towards your feet. That'll be, good. Okay. Now, a couple days go by, and they go back to the doctor and say, we just can't sleep like that. That's just too much. They had put cinder blocks under the head feet of the bed. So the bed is up in the air, 7 inches or whatever? And they're trying to sleep like that. Oh my fucking God.
Oh, it's unreal. And here, I grew up to appreciate opera.
I don't know how.
And jazz and, interested in foreign politics.
When we were growing up, we would listen to the opera on Saturdays. And that was just what you did. It would air on the radio and you listen to opera. My mother grew up in a household where she was taught classical piano. She had lessons and everything and recitals. And they would listen to the radio and watch television back in its heyday when you would have concerts and plays and other things on it. And my dad's parents were the same way. And so he, despite being brought up in a very rural area, my dad was exposed to all of these things, the opera and the classical music and plays and a variety of different ideas and books. And your parents didn't have any of that. They were culturally deprived. It was like they embraced ignorance, particularly your mother's family.
Well, it wasn't even like they embraced it. They just didn't know any better.
But the thing is they had the same exposure opportunities that my father's family and my mother's family had, and that was through radio and through television. And so, and of course my mother's family was formerly wealthy prior to the Depression, and so there was something more there. But my dad's family, they were rural. They were farm folks. My dad's paternal grandparents had a tobacco farm up in Tennessee. And it was one of those things when they had summers off, they would go up there and spend weeks on end working on the farm. My dad said they'd get up at sunrise, then they'd go out to work for a while, then they'd go and eat breakfast, then they'd go work till it got too hot, then they'd go and have lunch. And then that was the day. And his mother's family, they raised chickens in their own garden, and Tom Green built houses for whoever needed it. And so he had not a mill, but a wood shop. He could mill his own wood and everything, but that they were basic, farm and rural folks. But they had the same opportunities your folks did. They didn't take advantage of it.
I don't know. I don't know why some people decide I want to know more about the world, and some people are like, I have no interest in it, or actively reject it. I don't know what the difference is.
Well, maybe it is something about the world. I mean, my granddad he couldn't serve overseas because of his feet, his legs, but he did work on a base. But he ended up working for the Mars Project, which was military affiliate radio services. Like on MASH, radar's job, you dial the ham radio operators. That's what my granddad did. He recruited all those folks to maintain the ham networks. And so he got exposed to a whole world of folks, and they would travel around visiting people. And then my mother's family, her stepfather was in World War I, and her uncles were all in World War II, and they all saw action in the European theater. Maybe it was going overseas. Of course, your granddad should have had some exposure. He went to the Pacific.
Yeah, he was in Japan during the early 2 or 3 days of the occupation. But I don't know. There seemed to be this idea that the reason for education is so that you can get a high-paying job. Other than that, what's the point of it?
See, we didn't have that idea. Education was for the betterment of the person. And that came through my mother's family. The girls had gone to school throughout the 1800s, and that was something very uncommon, that you would be sent to a girls' school or, Lucy Cobb or something. And then my dad's family, they had educators, teachers among their folk. And then when my dad went off to college, he decided that then and there he would be a liberal arts degree and take advantage of everything he could. So when we were sent to school, when we were sent to university, he said, go and sample, see what you like. Try out things.
Well, my initial declaration of a major was English, and my dad wanted to know, well, okay, why'd you pick that? What are you going to do with it? Why'd you pick that? What are you going to do with it?
Can't make any money.
I'm like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. And now I find out that it really doesn't matter what you major in. It's just the fact that you finished college, because you can parlay that into anything.
No, that's not the reason. You go to college in order to expand your horizons.
Well, I know, but I mean, as far as getting a job, I'm saying. I could have majored in English, or knowing now what I know and who I've become, I would have gone into graphic design or just a general art degree or something. I don't know. Oh, I'm so disappointed. Both my children, I thought that at least one of them would become an artist like me, but no.
Well, Peter paints. I know you don't appreciate it, but he does paint models and such. And hopefully Reed will get in her drawing. God knows we've given her enough art supplies.
So many people that I've come across that I don't know, either maybe not like, but I respect the fact that they do work, went to the Rhode Island School of Design, and it's like, oh God, all these people, and you wonder, did they come from rich families, or did they just fall ass backwards into luck? I don't know. I think 50% of life is luck. I don't know. I don't know where willpower comes from. I don't know where the idea of I want to go for that and I'm going to go for it. I don't know where that comes from. But anyway. Oh God. I found a Miles Davis concert. I don't know why I looked it up. I guess I was looking up Dave Liebman, who played with Miles in the early 70s, and somehow that led me to this Miles concert in Vienna in 1973, and it was just phenomenal. It's amazing to me that so many people dismissed that period of his career. And well, it's electric rock funk-ish thing, and because it didn't fit the standard definition of jazz, and because there was a lot of political associations with jazz, a lot of people didn't like it.
You realize the irony of that? Here was a man who had recreated jazz a couple times over, and here he is recreating it a third time in this new form of jazz, and it was rejected somehow or another. Well, and he had helped define the other periods of jazz.
Yeah, well, see, there's a lot of racial politics to it, because for a lot of people in the, I'll say, 40s and 50s, jazz was specifically a black music, black American music, and rock was, at least at first, seen as white music, and the mingling of them was a no-no. In fact, I'll give you an example of that. In jazz guitar playing, at one time, bending the strings was a no-no, because that's rock and roll, that's blues. In jazz guitar playing, you do I can't remember what the word for it is, a slide, if you're gonna change notes in that sort of way. Do you smell those fumes?
Yeah, it's that stupid small penis truck.
I'm gonna crack the window slightly. So, I mean, I read a little bit of reading about that very subject last night, and I made a comment about it, how even Miles said, okay, you don't want to use the word jazz to cover what I'm doing, but is it still music? Okay, then what's the problem? You know? I don't know. I don't know if you can eliminate the political aspect from anything, but it'd be nice if you could see it apolitically. I mean,
it's pure art.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff
pure
like
creation.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we've gone over the mark, so that's our
Half-hour show.
Yeah, it's close to half hour, more like 24 minutes. So, anything else to add?
No.
All right, we're going to listen to some Miles Davis now. All right, so thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.